Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Lurkin here from Mobalytics, and today we're going to be going over the Season 8 PTR news and balance changes that we saw that are going to be coming in Season 8 on Tuesday. The PTR is going to come up. We're going to be able to check them all out. The next season is really focused on bossing, so, our best boss killers are going to be rearing their heads. We got some confirmation that Sorcerer is indeed the class that they want as the benchmark, and they like its progression the most, and its power is where they want the rest of the classes to be at. So that's the reason our question has finally been answered as to why Sorc has been bad for so long. Is because they want everyone to be bad. And I don't mean it like that. Sorcerer is fine for T4 content in general, but when the other classes are doing 150 pit, you start to question your own sanity on why you're playing this class. But I'm going to be going over some of the new season mechanics, the bossing, and I'm going to be going over all the skills, this sort of tier list thing, and the boss powers that I like with those skills. So I think the king is going to remain Lightning Spear, despite the fact that it is dog crap at bossing. It's still going to be very strong. I think Inferno's going to be extremely strong, but again, nobody really wants to play Inferno. For the 72 people that do play it, it's there's a lot of good damage over time stuff coming, so it's going to be great. And same with Incinerate, it's going to be really strong. Meteor got some huge buffs. I'm not totally sure what they entail, but meteorites themselves are going to be getting a lot stronger because they're going to be gaining benefits that Meteor has. Some of the damage scaling that Meteor gets, they're going to be applied to meteorites. We're not fully sure, but it should get more damage. Stormhorns was recently buffed, so Ball Lightning should be pretty good. Axial Conduit was recently buffed as well. It should be very strong, and there's some very good there's a very good power that interacts with the shock core skills, so it's going to be great. Firebolt, Shatter is dead, but Firebolt's still going to be strong, but nobody's going to play it because it's clunky. Blizzard may end up in A tier, get around a 2 to 3x damage buff from some reworks to some of the values of the Glacial Aspect, and a new rework to the Frozen Wake aspect, which is the ice armor one that makes ice spikes. Fireball, I have in B tier, but honestly, I could see it in A tier. It has its issues in pits with corridors, but it's a bosser. It smashes bosses as long as the bugs that it has stay, and it seems like they haven't talked about them at all, so they might just stay for another season because it really brings Fireball to exactly where it needs to be. Ice Shards was very disappointing. The unique was terrible. I'd go over that in detail, sort of why it's terrible and what it maybe a little bit of what it could need to not be terrible. Frozen Orb is still relegated to a entry-level Lightning Spear build, and it's going to remain C tier. Charge Bolts may find its way into B or A tier, purely using it to proc lucky hit effects such as the Lightning Surge Tempers, or just scaling your boss power damage, so it could be a pretty strong build. Arc Lash is probably still going to stay C tier. There are some boss powers that work with basics, but a lot of them are just applying this weird lightning damage over time. It gets weird. And then Hydra's still going to be terrible until it gets a new unique, and hopefully they don't give it some dog crap helmet like they did Ice Shards. All right, so the PTR boost, it's going to be on Tuesday, March 11th. The first 2 days, there will be no boosts. They want you to test the new leveling experience. They're going to make it harder to level. It's going to take longer. Less legendary is going to drop. You're not going to have as many aspects. So good luck leveling with Firewall, because that's one of the only builds that's not really relying on any aspects. So there's a new boss, Belial. There's unique items have been added. I don't think we know what those are yet. Maybe we saw them, but there can be a surprise. Paragon boosts are going to take you up to 300. The unique item caches and the legendary caches are now going to be ancestral. And you're going to be able to learn all the boss powers and probably max them out and gain horde keys and exalted lair bosses, keys, all that jazz. So it's going to be great. So the Ice Shards unique, I'm going to be honest, it's pretty terrible. Just right off the bat, it's a helmet, so you immediately lose Perdition. 54% crit chance and 60% damage on a helmet with some ranks to core is nothing to scoff at. So if you're going to make a unique in that slot, it needs to be really crazy. So what the hail of Vergless does is gives you 8 ranks to ice shards. You're going to be able to get up to 16. And it basically, you know, after you hit an enemy with 50 ice shards, you're going to get 75% damage. You now fire out 2 additional ice shards, so you fire 7, as seen by this picture, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it fires out in a fan pattern. And wow, this sounds awesome. It looks cool, but the problem is, you know, say you have an enemy right here. Look, they're only being hit by 3 of the ice shards. In the past, they were hit by 5. So it's actually a nerf to anything that isn't point blank. So that's how I feel about that. You're going to have to play this build as a barrel stuffer, and anyone that played Ice Shards in Season 0 understands how terrible the hit registration on Ice Shards can be when you are Raiment teleported on a clump of enemies and you are barrel stuffing them. It just seems to pass right over them. But I digress. I'm going to build Ice Shards with this, and I'm going to try and make it work. But I don't expect it to make a break out of B tier or C tier. It's just not going to be good in its current state. It's not doing enough to offset losing Perdition, and in fact it's making the build clunkier. But Piercing Cold got a really big buff, which is awesome. I've been asking forever for this to just get generic damage. Just give it some damage. But Ice Shards pierce 5 times, and they deal 50% more damage, an additional 10% more per subsequent enemy hit. So the funny thing is, this Piercing Cold change is better than this new unique helmet that they decided to add. This one little numerical change completely usurps this crappy helmet that they gave us. There's a new aspect, Shivering. It will not be used. I'm going to go over it. So enemies take up to 40% more damage based on how much they are chilled or staggering. So, you know, and if they're frozen, they're considered 100% chilled, so you get 40% damage, and you apply more chill. Whatever. But look at this Den Mother boss. You're staggering it. It's at 50% stagger. You will get 20% damage out of this instead of 40%, because the stagger bar is halfway filled. And then as it's staggered, you'll probably get the full 40%. But the problem is it's a twofold issue. So one is stagger resist. First, you know, some of the beefier bosses, some of the world bosses and lair bosses, they're very stagger resistant, so you're not going to get much value out of this. 2 is when you're actually staggering pit bosses, you know, after the 3rd stagger, the bar starts to fill up very slowly. It takes 10 times as long to fill it up after the 3rd stagger. And then 3, Unstoppables. So I don't really see this aspect. And the problem is we don't really have room for it. We have, you know, our top 3 aspects are Storm Swell, Shredding Blades, and Conceited. These 2 give 35%, just free all the time. Storm Swell even, you know, more damage against frozen enemies. It's crazy. And then Conceited is just a free 30%. We always have a barrier. So I'm not going to take this conditional 40%. It's not really going to be active on bosses a lot, even though it works with the stagger. But the main focus of this season is this new Belial boss and like just this boss ladder. And those fuckers take so long to stagger that you're not going to get value out of it. And then even, you know, Intercom, 39% damage if you play the teleport evade style. So it's just not that good. The Meteor changes were very good. Let's start off with Starfall Coronet. The cooldown got reduced from 3 to 10 to 3. So it used to have this huge range, 10 to 3, and now it's 5 to 2.5. That's very massive. That's a very tiny range. It's going to be much easier to get a new Starfall Coronet. And that 2.5 is pretty huge. It's going to be a lot easier to get your cooldown down to 1.8, 1.5, even lower, so that you can have permanent uptime on casting your meteors. But meteorites now do their own damage. In the past, meteorites did a percentage of meteors damage on impact, and then they had some small burn associated with it. The bonus damage from meteor now applies to all meteorites while this is equipped. I'm gonna be real with you. I don't exactly know what this means, but I've been told it's good. It means meteorites get more damage. So my thought process is, you know, you won't have to take the meteorite double damage temper. Maybe you can just take the meteor one, so you get more damage out of. I'm gonna get tired of saying meteor. You're gonna get more damage out of both your meteors and your meteorites. Maybe you can take mastery damage. It has a pretty high value, and that should increase your meteorite damage now. And then you could run aspect of 3 curses, but I don't even think I'm gonna run 3 curses this season because we have these boss powers that deal a lot of damage. So I want to take as many generic damage aspects as I can to boost those up. So 3 curses might not even be in the meta this season. Let's just put it that way. But the problem is, not the problem, but Meteorite's going to deal more damage, but this aspect of Armageddon, while Meteorites fall during Inferno, and while Inferno is active, your meteorites deal 360% more damage, 540% if this is on an amulet. Problem is, it's not backwards compatible. This only buffs meteorites, not the meteor. So it's still going to be a full-blown meteorite build. And, Adept will definitely probably work now. I think it worked in the past, but you never know. All right, so Blizzard, they actually cooked with Blizzard and Glacial. So the damage of Ice Spikes has been standardized across Blue Rose, Frozen Tundra, Frozen Wake, and Glacial Aspects. And for those who don't have muscle memory of what these are, well, Glacial is the main activator for our Blizzard build. It makes your Ice Spikes. Used to have a value of 572. These are all values when I have a staff equipped. So Blizzard used to have a value of 572 in a single aspect slot. Blue Rose had 715. Frozen Wake, which is the ice spikes that are made during ice armor, it had a value of 787. And then Frozen Tundra has this massive value of 930. I have confirmation that the standardized value is the Frozen Tundra value, which is 930. And this is 62% higher than what it was in the past at this 572. And then Frozen Wake, which is this ice armor aspect, it got a rework. TLDR, it's going to spawn ice spikes, and spawning an ice spike increases your damage by 3% for 2 seconds, up to 30 times. So that is 90% damage when you are spawning at 30 ice spikes. And because it lasts 2 seconds, you have to spawn 15 ice spikes a second. That is 7.5 blizzards out. And then also you're making ice spikes with ice armor. So my prediction is at 4 or 5 blizzards out with ice armor active, you will be at full 90% damage. That is big stonks. And then just these buffs alone, you get the 62% from the glacial buff. And then, we have a new 90% aspect. And then, we're giving up a 35% damage aspect to run it. So it's the relative gain from 35% to 90%. So that's another 40% damage. So our total is 2.25x damage. So Blizzard's twice as good. And there's some pretty good boss power. There wasn't the best boss powers for it this season, the witchcraft powers, but there's some really good boss powers for it. So Blizzard's going to be absolutely cooking. It's a really good boss or two. It's just not the best farmer because of the ramp up time. But if you've been wanting to play Blizzard, now is the season 8 is the season to do it. It's very strong. Paragon, they definitely cooked. So Static Surge in the past, every 8 seconds you would reapply this buff and you'd get 50% damage and you'd restore 30% of your max mana. Now, the 50% damage buff is going to last for 8 seconds. And then it can be reapplied every 1 second, which means you get this 30% max mana back every second. That's going to be a boon to Ball Lightning and Chain Lightning builds, which I am definitely aware that a lot of people have issues with mana pre-Starless. So this should ease a lot of those concerns and make Starless less mandatory. Enchantment Master got changed, so your enchantments are 30% stronger. They're still 30% stronger, but each equipped enchantment grants 30% increased damage with their main element. This is a boon to any build that wants to run Enchantment Master for speed farming, and it's also a boon for any build that naturally wants to run two enchantments that are the same as their the element that you're casting, and that's mainly Lightning Spear, because it really likes teleport, TP, and Lightning Spear enchantment. Because it naturally just wants to run those two. It's very nice. I would not go out of my way to force a double, enchantment to run this, because most builds right now have 5 Paragon boards that they can use to get damage. And it could just be a little clunky. There's still a lot of stuff going on with needing teleport enchantment on Fire and Frost builds, because mainly Frost builds that Enlightenment is still the best option. So it's a really good change. I think it's great, but it's not too game changing. Combustion got a huge buff. They added damage to burning as part of the calculation. So Combustion now scales by damage to burning and damage with burning. So Combustion, you get your 60% damage, and then it's 25% of your damage to and with burning bonus now. I checked it out on the Paragon. You can get 500% damage with burning. So that's an extra 125%. And then you can get a bunch of that from the Flame Feeder glyph here. I'm not fully sure. I didn't math out. how much extra damage Combustion is going to be getting now. The passive's a bit weird. It kind of scales wonkily, but I don't know, maybe another 33% damage out of it, something like that. That sounds ballparky good. And then let's talk about Incinerate enchantment and Conflagration. For those who care, a lot of burning builds will use the Incinerate enchantment with the aspect of Conflagration to artificially inflate your burning damage. Not artificially, but inflate your burning damage bonus, because it scales all that up, all the additive that you get from Torch and etc. So, but they said they fixed various instances where the Incinerate enchantment didn't interact properly with the aspect of Conflagration. So my concern is that they destroyed this functionality where this enchantment was bumping up our combustion. That's the worst case. But the best case is that, we've always known that Incinerate enchantment has never really been doing good damage because it's not scaling correctly. And Conflagration here, below this burning damage, they also have some it's like a fire damage pop every X seconds, or when you first, I don't know, it's something like that. There's more damage to Conflagration besides just the burning damage, I think. I don't know, maybe they fixed it for the better, so the enchantment's just not terrible, and I'm just rambling. But we're going to go next. Convulsions. I know right now people are worried, oh, it's a utility temper, but Convulsions is now a damage passive. So Convulsions is located down right here in the ultimate section. Shock builds are going to need to find 4 points to get it, and basically all Frost and Fire builds are going to need to find 5 points to get it, because it's just generic damage for having Crackling Energy. You may end up dropping Hoarfrost for this if you really can't afford the points, or you're going to lose a lot of quality of life points in things such as, everybody likes to max out those 5 ranks to teleport, but you ain't getting that no more, let me tell you. So you deal 5 to 10, you deal with 3 ranks, you deal 15% increased damage when you have a Crackling Energy. You periodically pick it up too, so it's easier to get. Frost and Fire builds are really going to rely on Mystical Teleport here. Every time you teleport, you make 3 Crackling Energy. And, we're in a huge teleport enchant meta. If you hate it, I'm sorry, but it's just going on everything. It's like Frank's Red Hot. I put that shit on everything. You just have to at this point. It's just so meta. So you're going to have to give up that 30% DR from the, it's not Mystic, it's Shimmering Teleport. You're going to have to give up the 30% DR from that. And you're going to have to bop around and make some CE. So it's not too terrible, I think in the PTR, the utility temper might be there, but trust me, that shit is not making it to live. They're not going to give us 33 ranks to Convulsions. Miscellaneous. So the lucky hit chance to freeze tempers have been removed from the game, rightfully so. I mean, what else did you take? You just took freeze tempers because of the Hoarfrost passive. So it's been replaced with a lucky hit chance, impairment and reduction, and crowd control duration. So I'm still going to take this worldly fortune temper, and I'm either going to take lucky hit chance if my build wants it, or I'm just going to take crowd control duration. CC's duration's great, and there's a boss power that kind of scales with it a little bit, so 1 CC duration temper will do. Fractured Winterglass still did nothing for Frozen Orb, but it now only spawns equipped conjurations on your action bar, so you're going to make more spears and more ice blades. With Fractured Winterglass, you're not going to be making those Hydras and Familiars anymore. So that's a buff to the Lightning Spear starter build. That's the Winterglass. Deep Freeze got kneecapped. It was already terrible. I think it could scale up to 1800%, and now it's at 200%. It was already dog shit, and now it's dead in the water. Crackling Energy and Shocking Impact got shock skill tags. Again, everybody knows what CE is, and it barely ever did damage, and it'll probably still do little damage, but it'll be better. It's our version of Rabies. Druid's Rabies that keeps getting buffed 70 times, and it's still terrible. Shocking Impact, when you stun an enemy or attempt to stun a boss, it does a flat amount of lightning damage, 50% per rank. It's got a shock skill tag now, so it probably should actually do a bunch of damage if it was I think it was missing a lot of that non-physical additive that we had, and it wasn't really benefiting during Enlightenment because it didn't have a tag. The Zan and Quacks runes have been changed. They're easier to proc now, but I'm not really going to go over these in depth, but basically they changed the wording of Zan and Quacks so that you can't snapshot them. So that's all dead, but Quacks is really cool now. Casting a skill other than a basic or defensive spends all your resource and increases your damage by 100% for 1 second. So that's interesting. Shatter is dead because of a change to the Greater Fireball node. Some people are sad. This was sent to me by Roxy's, but this is me. God rest in peace. Goodbye. See ya. Thank the Lord. Because nobody liked to run this, besides like 4 people. Fireball deals 10% increased damage to burning enemies. Not bad, just a flat 10%. And when a non-boss enemy takes this damage below 25% life, they are instantly killed. So with this node, anytime there's an enemy, the second they hit below 25% life, they just die. So, you know, if you're grouped up in a pit and you have a, I don't know, you can have some value here. You have a 25% execute for anyone that you're playing with, just by you hitting the enemy. This may usurp the destructive crit damage node, because this is a lot. You get the 10% and you get this 25% execute, but you're gonna have less boss damage. So the season mechanic is bossing. They added some new bosses. I don't want to spoil it all, and you probably saw it in the live stream, but you know, there's new boss ladders, there's a new boss tier. I honestly forget his name at this point, but so I'm focused on builds here. The focus of this season is going to be builds that can boss very well, and the best one is Fireball. Meteor's pretty good. Blizzard's also a great bosser. Incinerate, great single target. And, you know, it's a boss. It's a small area, so the fact that you're kind of slow and standing still doesn't really matter. Ball Lightning and Chain Lightning recently got buffs, so those are going to be strong. And Inferno Spam is also really strong, but I don't really expect anyone to play this build because it's just kind of annoying. Lightning Spear, it's going to be great. It's 5 times as good at mobbing, and it's just kind of shit at bossing, but it's so strong that it'll be palatable and passable for bossing. They've killed boss rotations. Now you can go and you can summon a boss whenever you want, and you can teleport to the boss lair. But after you kill the boss, it's going to pop open a chest. Well, there's going to be a chest, and you need to use a key to open it, so there's no more, you know, boss rotos. But they lowered the amount of uniques that you can get down from 6 to 5. Basically so that when you're partying, you can get 6 items again, because you get more items per party member. So let's go over the boss power. So this is the new actual season mechanic. Looks really familiar. Looks just like the witch powers, doesn't it? But you get 1 main power, and then you get these 3 modifiers. And each of these powers has a main and a modifier. As you can see, this Wandering Death's chest beam. It has this, when you're channeling a skill, it spawns a beam, a Kamehameha Goku beam. It deals some frostbite damage, and enemies that are hit by it take 50% more damage for 1 second. And as you continually hit them with the beam, it should keep reapplying. So this, the main portion of these scale with Paragon, and I have been informed that I can share this. You can you could deductively use logic to figure that out, but I digress. The main scales with Paragon. It started at 300%, and we don't know what this guy is at for his Paragon, but you know, it's already up to 810%. And then this was upgraded 9 times. This started at 15%, and it went up to 24 plus 9. And the shows that the minor scales with rank. So as you upgrade it, the minor portion will scale, and if you have a main power, you don't really need to upgrade it because it's scaling with Paragon, if that makes sense. So you can focus all your power upgrading into the modifiers that you want to use for your build. This is the one I'm most excited for. I'm most excited for Grigoire's Lightning Square. It's a rare boss power. So after you cast a core skill, lightning tiles outward for 1.2 seconds, striking, dealing a bajillion damage, 71,000 damage per lightning strike. For reference, Axial Conduit has a value of 3,800, and it can be bloated up to 12,000 or 5,000, 12,000 or 15,000 through, you know, if you can get enough ranks to chain lightning. This, right off the gate, every strike is dealing 71,000. However, I do not know if this number is also being bloated. We know how famous their tooltips are. I don't know if this number is being bloated by some lightning damage additive or something like that, so we're not totally sure. But it's looking really good. As you can see, this guy's only, in the video, he was only at 101 Paragon and was already up from, I forget how much damage it had. Let's see, 300% lightning damage. So it started at a value of 1,800 because that's what 300% weapon damage is. And it's already up to 71,000. So these are going to fucking scale, dude. It's going to be great. But this is what it looks like. You cast your core skill. a lightning bolt drops, and then 4 lightning bolts drop, and then 4 more in that Grigoire lightning pattern. This is going to be really good with ball lightning, even lightning spear too, because it uses ball lightning as a generator, or chargeable, basically any of the shock core skills. And it may end up being so strong that it makes it into just like a fireball, meteor build, all of those. And you're just like, fuck it, bro, we're casting Grigoires, lightning squares everywhere. So boss powers with damage like this, they're going to be strongest on builds with the most slots of generic damage aspects. So that like could even be a charge bolt build where you don't even run a charge bolt aspect, you don't run Lamb Essen, you just straight up run maybe Fists of Fate and some lucky hit. That's actually how I'm going to build charge bolts this season. It's going to be Fist of Fate and lucky hit, chance to deal lightning damage tempers, and I'm going to scale the shit out of this lightning square. It's going to be a pure vehicle. Charge bolts ain't doing shit. So here are the main powers I'm really excited for. You get one of these, by the way. So while channeling the skill, you spawn the Kamehameha beam, and enemies take 50% more damage. And it will, you cast your Incinerate, and the beam will go where your Incinerate is casting, and you're going to beam the shit out of everything. So after you, this one is going to could be okay with Blizzard, but Blizzard doesn't have the most damage aspects slots that aren't Ice Spike or specific. So after casting 3 skills, which apply crowd control, shoot out Sleet Ice Spikes that deal 800% cold damage. But, I mean, if you're stacking cold, etc., it could be pretty strong. After you cast, this is the one I just talked about, after you cast the core skill, lightning tiles outwards, deals the lightning damage. This one I like on Fireball and Meteor, because you're always, you want permanent uptime on your Inferno. So after you cast an ultimate skill, lob 4 bombs that deal 800% fire damage and reduce your ultimate skill's cooldown by 5 seconds. That's going to really help you keep uptime on your Inferno. And also, these are both, it's dealing fire damage. When it says fire damage, that means direct fire damage. So in the ways that you're scaling Fireball and Meteor, I think Meteor is going to be really good this season with this. The way in which that you're scaling both of these is direct fire damage, so it's going to be very strong. I thought this one was also kind of cool. It might end up being good. After damaging a vulnerable enemy, you shoot out piercing projectiles that deal 400% fire damage and apply vulnerable. So I like that because, say you have ice blades on your build, or maybe you have lightning spear to apply vulnerable or something like that. And then when you hit that enemy, it's going to deal fire damage. And it's going to apply vulnerable to enemies around you. So that could sort of solve all your vulnerable issues. I know we get vulnerable through Inferno, but I digress. And then it deals 40% more damage to vulnerable enemies. So that's also cool. After standing still for 1 second, you summon this skull. It rotates around you and it breathes fire that burns for 1200% base. And these are like the base values. So it's going to get a lot stronger. It's going to be good on the burning builds. And then this one, I don't really like this one. But, it could end up just being the most damage because you gain increased damage. So it might just end up being the one that everyone wants to run because it's the biggest self buff. But damaging a crowd controlled enemy marks them, makes them and surrounding enemies unstoppable. Sounds terrible, right? But you gain 10.5% increased damage, attack speed, and movement speed for 3 seconds. So depending how high this damage scales up to, the ultimate pit pushing setup could be to run the exploiter aspect where you deal 40% more damage to unstoppables, and you want to go around making everything unstoppable, and you completely remove all crowd control damage from your build, and you gain all this increased damage and attack speed, and you just plow through the unstoppables. So that's my prediction for what the pit pushing meta will end up being, is the exploiters aspect and this as your main damage thing. Heard it here first, folks. So let's go over the modifier powers, and I have 2 slides of this, and remember, you get 3 of these. So this is just what I would pair it with, just for this one, but activating your main boss power spends all your primary resource to increase its damage. So I thought this one would be cool with Meteor, and you use it with the fire damage lobs after you cast your ult. Meteor doesn't need the resource, so why not buff up this main power? Could be cool. This one, of course, Lightning Spear got a massive buff. Your summons deal more damage. They scale based on your crit strike damage bonus. Sounds familiar. And up to a maximum of 17%, and this value is going to get higher. Exactly how high, we're not sure, but who knows? Sky's the limit, baby. You gain 5% vulnerable damage. this is just generic vuln damage. It's just a modifier or whatever. You only need, I did the math, you only needed 1 crowd control temper to crowd control duration temper to get the max bonus. So that's just free vuln damage. Who knows how high it'll go. This one's free crit chance for you know, you get crit chance based on how much shadow res you have. It'll be free. And who knows how high this will scale. This will just be free crit chance. Lightning Spear might end up running this as a way to, you know, solve all of its crit chance woes if it wants to run Shaco. Your evade cooldown. This one's also really cool. This one's really good for speed farm. Based on your lightning res, you get a bunch of evade cooldown reduction. That's great. And then this one's just like this generic distant damage, which I'm not too excited about, but you deal more damage to enemies the further they are from you. This one I am pretty excited for. I really need to figure out how this one works. You gain 5% increased damage to all elements. For each, you know, element's resistance you have, you gain 0.2% increased damage for that element up to a maximum of 15.5%. If this boosts up Enlightenment's damage, Enlightenment is going to be insane, and we're going to have to slot it back on every build. Like, I know we just got the new Asus Ferocity, but if this like juices up our non-physical damage, Enlightenment's just going to be king. We're going to get, and then this one's cool. You gain a bunch of attack speed up to 10.5% for each 1% damage to crowd control enemies. So I'm assuming that you would need 1 damage to crowd control temper, and you can get a bunch of attack speed. This one is you hit an elite enemy, and bosses are considered elites, but it says not world bosses. But it creates like a blister with 10% of their max life. And if you're able to kill the blisters it makes 3 blisters. If you're able to kill the blister within 15 seconds, it's going to take 5% of their life. So this one will probably also make its way into the pit pushing meta, because it's just a way to chunk the elites down faster. This one's really good for burning builds. It's just burning enemies take 21% more damage from your dot effects for 5 seconds after activating your main boss power. All your other attacks burn enemies for 18,000% damage over 3 seconds. That's really high, and this is just the base. And then this one's just generic vuln damage. You would completely ignore this casting a basic skill. Makes all nearby enemies vulnerable. You don't give a shit about that whatsoever. But activating your main boss power grants 11% increased vulnerable damage. So if you have a main boss power that's going off a lot, you know, at least every 5 seconds, you know, you just get increased vulnerable damage. So that's just generic vuln damage. So I have an example set up with Ball Lightning. So say we're running Ball Lightning and we have Enlightenment on. You know, we have our Strike of Stormhorn, our Bowling Ball build that's dealing a bunch of damage. But we're running Grigoire's Lightning Square to get a bunch of more lightning damage spawning. And then, you know, the modifier is just a quick mock-up of what I would run with it. I'd probably run this non-physical one that I talked about, where you get the damage to all elements and increase damage for that element up to 15.5%. I'd run that, and then I'd run these 2 generic vulnerable ones, you know, gain 10.5% vuln damage, and then anytime you activate Grigoire's Lightning Square, which you're doing every second, 1.2 seconds, you get 11% more vulnerable damage for 5 seconds. So just like, you know, you got this big, you have all your Ball Lightning damage, you have all your Grigoire's Lightning Square damage, and then you just have 3 generic things that are, you know, this is hopefully boosting your non-physical, your lightning damage, all that jazz. And then, you know, you have lightning spears going around because of unstable currents, so everything's vulnerable. So you just have these 2 generic vuln damage boosters. That, you know, nothing too crazy. Big damage and then damage boosters. That's sort of how I see these, you know. I kind of like the damage. I think the damage looks really strong from a lot of these, so I like a damage max power. I like a damage power here, and I like 3 things that make your build and the power better. So here's my synopsis. So there were no changes to masterworking, which I'm fucking pissed about. Straight up. Masterworking is cancerous. I know it's not the best term. Masterworking is terrible. I hate it. It makes me not want to play the game. There were no changes to the end game besides adding more bosses. You know, pits are still all that there really is. There were no mine cages added that could make hordes or anything else harder. They just made pit scale harder, so now you're not going to be able to go as high, and it's going to be harder to level your glyphs unless these boss powers really carry us hard. And there are no changes to overpower, so, you know, the best builds in the game will still be It's probably going to be Barb on some overpowered build. Let's be honest. Because Necro got gutted. Class is in shambles. You think Sork's bad. Necro is in shambles. Nothing works, and all they had... have fun playing Bone Spirit. Anyways, the boss stuff looks really cool. The bosses look cool, and the boss powers look really cool and strong. I'll get bored in 4 weeks. That sounds bad, but that's up from 2 to 3 weeks. So, you know, they're going to get another week or 2 out of me. I'm excited for that. I want to play Blizzard. I want to play Chain Lightning and Ball Lightning and Fireball and Meteor. The one thing I don't want to play is Lightning Spear. I'm sorry. I'm done with that build. Cool. It's like 3 seasons now. Just play something else, man. Ice Shards is comically still dog water. Just the unique is just terrible. That's all I gotta say. And Lightning Spear is still gonna be king. So look for Makuna Shakuna. I'll catch you guys. Peace.